Hello everyone and welcome to this Investors, Blockchain and NFTs, Is It Worth the Investment panel discussion. My name is Triska Hamid, I am the editor of WAMDA. For those of you unfamiliar with WAMDA, we are an ecosystem enabler. We invest in startups and we write about startups, do research and have events as well. So to discuss this topic, we have on the panel Sonali Goita from Panthera Capital Investments, sorry, I had to read that. Yassine Abu Dawood from Brink.io and Dr. Abdulrahman Al-Ulyan from Daman Valley. If I could ask each of you to start off with a little bit about what you do and your position on blockchain and NFTs. So Sonali, why don't we start with you?
Right. Hi, everyone. So I'm Sonali, heading the VC and PE practice of Panthera Capital Investments. We are a sector agnostic VC arm of Fujairah Holding, and we invest in MENA and India. And with regards to NFTs and blockchain, I think I'll elaborate more as we go along, but it is definitely a positive, and I'll touch upon, what in that positive is what we are looking at. Okay.
Yassine?
Thank you. My name is Yassine Abu Dawood. I am the CDO and managing partner for Brink. I'm responsible for the whole MENA region, which includes the GCC and Levant. We have operations in Oman, Dubai, Saudi, and our headquarters is actually based in Bahrain for the region, and our main headquarters is actually based in Hong Kong. For us, I would say in the last kind of year, we've taken a very strong push in terms of all Web 3.0 and looking at all types of projects that we can invest in and support and accelerate through our programs. I think in terms of the, where do we stand? We really look at to see how we can, tokenize on projects, how we can actually, give people their own assets and their own data, which we can always talk about later on.
Dr. Abdulrahman.
So Abdulrahman Al-Ulyan, I'm the founder of Taiba Valley and the blockchain lab. It was the first blockchain lab in Saudi. We work with regulators, with educators, and with different funds to advocate for investment in blockchain and other project related activities, including crypto and NFTs.
Okay, thank you for the introductions. I want to start with NFTs because that's where most of the hype was. Last year, we saw around $10 million. Yes, sorry, I'm going to start that bit again. Thank you everyone for those introductions. I'm going to start off with NFTs. Last year, we saw around $10 million being invested in the NFT, mainly marketplaces, across the UAE and Saudi Arabia. So far this year, only one NFT-related startup has raised investment. But I want to get a sense of why there was so much hype around NFTs and whether this is continuing so far this year or not. Who'd like to take that one?
I can start. So I think that NFTs have just been a trading instrument until now, which is pretty typical of any new digital asset trajectory actually. And the hype is now just getting corrected. And with the bear markets going forward, I think this correction should happen much faster. But having said that, all that happened in NFTs was just around investing. There's a lot of more powerful applications of NFTs that are still waiting to get developed at scale. So right now, I would say it's just the Palm Pilot era in NFTs. Even with the investing, I think just like with any other financial asset trajectory, investing in any new market always comes with acceptance of new risks, profiles, etc. But as financial assets evolve in their journeys, many investment strategies also get evolved to help investors reduce possible losses and also to price the asset correctly. So I think in NFT trading, what has been the hype, and even in NFT trading, there will be investment strategies that are still to be evolved. But at the same time, visionary founders are already working on, long-term, real-world, functional use cases of NFTs, where NFTs would not merely be treated as trading instruments, but will have much more powerful applications across industries.
I mean, we've seen NFTs really being embraced by the art world. Yassine, have you seen something similar or any different other use cases for them?
Well, definitely, for us with our work with Animoca brands, I think one of the most interesting places that we're going to see this grow, I believe, even faster than art, is all around the gaming. And the idea of tokenization in that gaming, owning virtual assets in gaming. This market has been going on for quite some time. I think we've only seen in the last maybe year or even 18 months that it's gained some real traction as mentioned as an alternative investment. However, there's a lot of naysayers who say, what am I actually buying here? But I think if you look at the way technology has just changed over the last 10, 20 years and the adoption rate of things like the internet and now blockchain, we are going to evolve. And from what I see, and I'm not claiming that I'm a very old gentleman, but the younger, the new generation is really, really, really pushing us forward. This is the norm for them. I'll give you a perfect example of, something as simple as like Fortnite. My son has come to me, and he's young, he's around 10 years old, and he said to me, I'd like to buy something called V-Bucks. And I'm like, what's a V-Buck? And he's like, oh, I can buy stuff and I can, get skins and stuff like that. For me, I'd rather take some money and probably go buy, a new pair of shoes like I was when I was a kid. But he doesn't want that. He sees the value in that V-Buck. So he can equate that to $1 and accept it. And I think that's the norm right now. And he's only 10, might I add. So I think the idea of NFTs, number one, it's so broad. And number two, as a digital asset, it's just going to grow more and more.
Can you, I'd love to hear some other use cases for it. So you just mentioned e-gaming and digital sports, but are we likely to see it evolved into the workspace, into our everyday lives in some way?
So this is something that will obviously take time, but I definitely believe that the way that we look at information today and receive that information is going to change over the next 3 to 5 years, just because of, number one, the ownership of that information. And I think also empowering the user to create content that they own and they want to sell. I think most people don't understand that on the platforms that we use today, the content you create is actually not yours. It's all centralized, within Facebook or Instagram, or, I would say probably 5 or 6 large companies. But I think that as we move forward and people start creating content, however, tokenizing it and using NFTs as a technology, I think we're going to see a lot more liberty and a lot more even better content creation. Because it's going to be decentralized. You control your content. You decide who sees it, and you can also decide how much you want to charge for it. So I think that's going to be interesting.
I can talk more about this as well. The use cases that I see in NFTs, and I'll just draw parallels with my time in markets. So I spent my first couple of years in markets structuring protective investing structures for corporates, financial institutions, infrastructure projects across using derivatives across financial assets like equities, commodities, currencies. And I draw a lot of parallels with the current digital assets from that trajectory. And so at the time, most structures, even the speculative ones, held up pretty well until before 2008. But after the crisis, mostly only the ones that were backed by real underlying assets were the ones that followed through. And so if I were to apply that same theory to digital assets, my thesis is that even now the digital assets and even NFTs that are backed by an underlying physical asset or use case with, linked to a real world application are the ones that are more likely to hold up in the long run compared to the ones that are solely virtual or more speculative. So if we look at NFT, with the non-fungibility and the powerful applications that can come with that, one would be in the IP industry, where brands can actually monetize and protect their IPs through NFTs. So that would be pretty powerful because it can democratize the whole IP process and bring it to, an average user. The other would be to actually use NFTs to track information, not just to transact, like in supply chain with movement of goods and what some of the precious stone industry players are trying to do right now, to actually use NFTs to track literally the produce, the distribution, purchase, any cure interventions for precious stones, and also ultimately potentially, detect any counterfeit resales. So, so in all of these real world supply chain industries and identity industries, where it could be, creating identity profiles for academic records, personal profiles, medical records, all of that can be done using NFTs. And if you just go back to NFTs being collectibles, which the brands are doing at the moment, that as well coupled with the physical products, I think can give a long-term, customer engagement. This is what some of the Adidas and the Gaps of the world have already started doing. And from a customer perspective as well, if they are just looking at NFT collectibles, without any physical product attached to it, then I guess they're looking at it from a trading perspective.
We'll come back to this. We'll come back to this because I think it opens up a much wider debate. But I'd like to come to you, Dr. Abdulrahman, to talk more about the blockchain side of things, because everything that Sonali just mentioned, that traceability, the ownership, all takes place on the blockchain. So I'd love to get a sense of how attitudes and understanding of the blockchain has changed over the past year or so.
Thank you, Tereska, and I would like to comment on what Yasin and Sonali has talked about NFT, and I think the use cases there are we are seeing only the top of iceberg of the use cases there. Starting with art and how strongly we are passionate and affected with art, it starts the hype, but there are different use cases that are related to all of us when you are thinking of tokenizing hotels or ticket airlines, or even the culture and museum and our daily routines. So there are huge opportunities and room for NFT use cases to progress, and we will see this throughout, I think, the next the 5 to 10 years. Last year, I was mentoring a startup. They are working on tokenizing and some of Saudi culture and icons, including horses, camels, and I think we will see more of this attachment or digital attachment to our life through and there will be more, not only rational investment but also emotional investment into the space.
Okay.
To go into your question about the our understanding of blockchain and its features, and I think it is the same features and understanding that has been for the last 5 years of the technology itself, but we see more application use cases and startup who are trying to commercialize and prove the technology. Still, there are a lot of work to be done, but I agree with Sonali. We are seeing use cases in supply chain, in tracking education certificates and training, and different aspect of blockchain technology use cases. But to be frank, the technology has been proven in the cryptocurrency space, and this is where most of the investment are going.
I want to know, this hype around NFTs that we saw towards the end of the last year, how much of that was driven by cryptocurrencies and people wanting to not miss out this time? You know, the people that missed out on the rise of Bitcoin, they saw what the potential was. So how much of this hype that we're seeing around NFTs be a result of the fear of missing out?
I mean, look, I think that the cryptocurrency market has given, you know, this vertical of Web 3.0 kind of a bad name. You know, there are a lot of benefits with cryptocurrencies, whether it's a small coin, an alternative coin, or a large coin. However, you know, like every new industry, there's also a lot of speculators and a lot of folks, you know, who are, you know, really just focused on, you know, how to just make more money. But I think if you look at the applications of, you know, what the crypto world has done and what it can do, I think we're going to see a very, very, very big benefit for everybody as a whole ecosystem. But like I said, I think because of that, you know, Bitcoin was like $100, you know, like for example, like 10 years ago, and now it's obviously a lot more. But I think eventually we're just going to see some of the small players get out. We're going to see this, I don't want to say become institutionalized, but I do think that, you know, with the regulation, you know, it's definitely going to be more stable.
What do you say to people who say that NFTs are redundant because we have digital certificates that can identify that whatever product you've bought belongs to you, or, you know, there are other means of identifying the supply chain? Why is it that we need NFTs in the use cases that you outlined earlier?
Right. So I think NFTs is an all-encompassing tokenized asset, you know, like Yassine was touching upon as well. The tokenization, I think we should not forget the last T of the NFT. So non-fungibility is just a part of NFT. And yeah, digital certificates can very well, you know, apply to certain use cases. But at the end of the day, tokenizing it and making it sit on top of a blockchain ledger, I think that is a powerful use case that comes with NFTs. And that's where the whole traceability or, you know, aspect, the functionality also comes in with NFTs. So when you're talking about supply chain, you know, like I mentioned for rare stones, or even let's say perishable food, you know, right now we don't know where really our food has been, you know, through how many containers, and whether it already was expired even before it touched us, etc. So this whole origination and you know, ownership provenance that NFTs provide, I think that's what makes it different from a typical digital certificate. And so the applications there are much, much wider across industries and very powerful.
But one of the biggest downsides to all of this is the amount of energy required for each transaction. So some of the latest research shows that each NFT transaction requires 340 kilowatts of energy. That's just one single transaction. And that is, for the average UAE citizen, it's a week's worth of their energy consumption. So how can we justify that right now, given what is happening around the world with regards to sustainability and climate change?
Yeah, I think, you know, just to comment on that digital and sustainability, I think these two are probably the biggest opportunities that we are seeing. for the next couple of years. And so at some level, both will need to be balanced. I completely agree with you that, there's a huge sustainability factor that gets compromised, even though digital innovation is immense with blockchain, NFTs. But at some level, some sort of a marriage between the two will need to be seen.
Okay. And just to add to that, I think the sustainability angle is, obviously very important. We as a company also, I would say 80% of our investments are always around sustainability, ways that we can help, the world itself, whether through the energy. We even have a food tech program. But I wouldn't be too worried about that, just because right now the investor mindset is actually focused on sustainability. So I think that, you're going to have a lot of entrepreneurs who are going to try and look at these problems and solve them. But what's confident, I believe, is that there's a market for investors to go in and put money, and they believe in it. I would say 10 years ago, people were really focused on just, profit-driven companies. And I think right now, profitability and sustainability can actually coexist, in one parallel track, which has changed over the last 10 years. So I definitely see that there is a problem, but I'm very confident that I think with all the resources around us, whether it be capital, whether it be entrepreneurship, I think we can solve a lot of these problems.
Okay. I mean, the vast majority of NFTs currently live on the Ethereum blockchain, but there are loads of blockchains and it's quite a fragmented market out there. Dr. Abdul Rahman, maybe if you can talk a little bit about the issues of this kind of fragmentation that we see in the blockchain space and how that will play out in the next few years.
So I think fragmentation will it's an area of improvement like sustainability, where there will be an ecosystem that whether it's Ethereum, Tezos, or others, they will be the dominant in and other ecosystem can coexist and work with it as one ecosystem. But I see more of application. Even NFTs are in Ethereum, and I know 2.0 it's taking more time than expected, but they are tackling their more areas of sustainability and other area that improve from Ethereum 1.0. So to answer your question, I think we will see over the next few years a dominant ecosystem that most of developer and investor will go there.
I mean, Sonali, Yassine, how do you feel about which blockchains will be more dominant and whether the others stand a chance?
Well, to be honest with you, I even if it is fragmented, I don't think that that's a bad thing. I think that, the whole point of decentralization is to give, users the power to choose. So you have Polygon, you have Ethereum. I mean, you have some really big players, and then you have smaller players who maybe cater to different type of clients. So for example, Tezos, a lot of their focus has always been with large corporate clients. Ethereum is definitely a more decentralized for everyone. So, I mean, you can build on whatever chain you want, but I think it's important that we have options. So I mean, yes, some of the small ones, aren't going to make it, and some of the big ones are, and some of them are going to be bigger than others. But that's not a bad thing. I think having options is the most important thing.
And I completely agree. And I think, just to build on that, the interoperability between the blockchains, I guess that would be something that is important. And the second thing is, not just which blockchain, but what ultimately, how the blockchain is being utilized by the solution, by the startup, is what is going to be more important. What risk management structures are they putting in place to ensure that the risks that are associated with that particular blockchain are being addressed in an investor preserving method.
You're all investors. I'd like to know what exactly specifically you guys look at when you have a startup that's either utilizing the blockchain or is focused on NFTs. What are you considering, particularly ones that are pre-launch?
So we, from our end, we have our fund in Hong Kong. It's $100 million fund, and it's for our accelerator, which is called Launchpad Luna. We do check sizes as low as 100, going up to maybe 300. In that area. I think for us, number one, the company has to be solving a problem. I think number two, they have to have a really strong team. One thing that I can tell you is, in terms of talent in this space, it's not easy to find talent in this space because it's such a new vertical. So, most people who work in Web 3.0 won't even take a full-time job. They'd rather work as consultants than actually work for one company, which has been a challenge. And then I would say number three for us, very important too, is the idea of tokenization. So how can we, either pivot your business or help support your business to tokenize? Because we're interested in the investment, so the underlying asset, obviously, of the company, and then we're also interested on the tokenization part to see, how we can get tokens, through that project.
So for us, we invest, through equity, and I'll just give you an example of one of the blockchain investments that we did. So again, the thesis that I was telling you about, that a digital asset but backed by a physical underlying. And so I can say that, somewhat of a marriage also between the current systems and the new systems and the old systems. So, innovation and regulation coming together, optionality and accountability coming together. With that thought, we invested in a startup that has sort of married the innovation advantages of blockchain with the compliance advantages of the old systems. And so it's building an infrastructure for tokenization and democratization of illiquid asset classes, but at the same time has built in, an approach of investor preservation through tying all of this with the regular compliance and regulation. So this, I think, in the blockchain technology, such applications have a very powerful future, because it's utilizing the blockchain technology's strong time stamping, but at the same time, it's taking into account some of the governance or the regulatory features that are missing, and using the current systems to give that convenient platform to build that in. So that is one of the things that we look at when analyzing startups, in addition to what Yasin mentioned, that how well fitting is it with our thesis,
okay,
and the defensibility around its solution.
Thank you. Dr. Abdurrahman, is there?
Yeah, for us, we always start with the team, whether it's a strong team that can execute their promise, and then the use case or the problem that they are trying to solve, and whether it has a legit market, and this is where we make the decision.
Okay, so now you mentioned regulations. Now, there are regulations here and there across the region with regards to digital assets. I'm not familiar with any specific to NFTs. How much of a challenge is it operating in this field where there are little to no regulations?
Actually, the NFT regulation is obviously challenging just because of the way it operates. I mean, at the end of the day, you're decentralizing a product that it does not fit in any kind of asset class. So when you talk about, you know, theft or fraud or all these things, how do you regulate that when, you know, like, well, you can regulate it, and the Emirates is trying to do that with their virtual asset. I think it's VERA. Maybe Dr. I'm sure you're aware of this, where it's pretty much like RERA, but it's for the virtual world. And they're starting there, but it's a challenge. I mean, this is something that's very new, and I think that it's going to take time to build it and to build it right.
I mean, you mentioned theft. Most recently, Seth Green, his Bored Ape Yacht Club NFT was stolen, and there's no way of getting it back. And the show that he had planned to produce with it, he can no longer do because he doesn't own the NFT.
Yeah.
So we are starting to hear of these kind of stories come out, which to me is quite surprising, because the blockchain is meant to be the most secure, it's the most open, and you can trace everything back. So how does this happen?
Well,
So I think
sorry, no, please go ahead, Doctor.
I will comment on the regulation side, and I think Dubai and the Emirates are leading the effort in the MENA in adoption and regulating, and try to understand blockchain, NFTs, metaverse, and try to be ahead of the game. And in this regard, I think the phrase of innovate then regulate, it is the best that they can fit, because it's very hard for regulator to comprehend and predict and enable and empower entrepreneurs and startups to be to utilize the technology and be active in the ecosystem. I'm sure all governments are trying to push for security, protection, and also empowering their citizens to utilize the technology for the better of their economy and the entrepreneurs themselves. But the fact it is very hard to comprehend and then build a law that empower and protect at the same time, empower entrepreneurs and startup, and protect at the same time the citizen and the economy. And
I'm not going to let this theft bit go, because we spoke about proof of ownership for physical assets. So say I buy a designer handbag and it comes with an NFT that shows that I purchased this handbag and it belongs to me. What happens if someone steals that NFT? I still have the physical handbag, but they have the NFT that proves that I own it. Who becomes the legitimate owner of this handbag? And what happens if I want to sell this on? Is anyone asking these questions? Is anyone answering these questions? Or is it still at a philosophical stage?
I think these are very relevant questions, and sort of linked with the IP NFTs that I was talking about before. Now, exactly as you pointed out, you might be holding the NFT as well as holding the IP. IP is the bag, right? But you lose the NFT, you're still holding the IP. And so how does this link between the NFT and IP work? I think this is still, sort of an evolving technology. The answer to that is not yet, applied in all forms at the moment. And this is where, I think when a technology, a groundbreaking technology reaches a certain level where it is democratized for reuse, that's when we say that it's already evolved to a certain level. That's what happened with AI, let's say with speech-to-text technology and visual recognition. These technologies we are already able to reuse. And so at some level, exactly, I think your question is absolutely right, because That's what the IP NFT innovators are asking it as well. And that, that exact link between how the ultimate IP will be linked with NFT in a protective way is still to be figured out in a proper sense.
Yassine, would you like to add anything to that?
No, I mean, I think Sonali is just spot on. At the end of the day, we are going through a technological shift. I mean, there were times when we were, I would say 20 years ago, we were like, oh, I would never put my credit card online. It's too dangerous. What if somebody, steals the credit card? It's fraudulent. I mean, we've created a system now where literally, you can pay for anything with your phone in your face. Like, you're not even using anymore any kind of plastic cards or even currency, right? But obviously with that, there had to be regulation, there had to be security, there had to be adoption. So I agree with Sonali by saying is like, I hate this, fake it till you make it, but it's more like you have to keep on going, keep on building, and slowly, it will be more secure. Slowly, we'll be able to transact in a way that we transact normally today with even more security, but it's just going to take time.
Okay. I'm mindful of the time, so I'm going to ask the final question, which is, are blockchain NFTs worth the investment? Dr. Abdulrahman, let's start with you. Do you think it's worth the investment?
Absolutely, yes. To the right opportunities, to the right team, right market. Yes, and we are seeing more investment and funds, and not only retail investor, but also institutional and even some government. They are coming and putting their action and money into the space.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, absolutely as well. I think both the technologies are very powerful. They have functional use cases in the real world to come. And I think it's just a start. Regulatory world is just starting to get involved as well. Strong business cases using these technologies are just starting, and innovative ways to reduce the risks associated with these technologies are also just getting evolved. And so there definitely there's no FOMO at all, I feel, because it's just trading. In fact, that was happening until now. But these technologies are not just trading instruments. They are literally deep technologies, as I would call them.
Okay, Yassine.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with my colleagues and also add to that the industry is only going to grow. Now, I think one of the questions is that if you're a fundamental investor and you're going into this industry, then don't look at it from the view of a speculator, as in look at the real technologies and the benefits of the blockchain, of NFT, and separate it from cryptocurrencies, because that's a completely different game altogether. So I believe it's only going to grow. Now, whether that growth is up like that or kind of up and down slope going towards success, that depends on the investors, that depends on the governments, that depends on the entrepreneurs, it depends on the users. We're going to see this adoption. It's just a matter of time. The question is, how fast is it going to be, and where do you see yourself put your investment and feel confident behind it?
Yassine, because you invest both globally and regionally, where do you see the strongest growth in this space? Which city is making some noise?
I mean, look, in terms of regulation, nobody is beating Dubai / Abu Dhabi. They're definitely by far the fastest. We've seen, a huge, kind of exodus of people from the States, from Europe, especially with the conflict now with Ukraine and Russia. A lot of them have now fled to Dubai because they can get visas, they can work there, the regulation is there. There is investment. I mean, people aren't pouring billions, but it will come. But definitely, the UAE, which I'm pretty sure that Riyadh will also follow behind. Bahrain has created a lot. Yeah, and NEOM. Bahrain has created some great legislation, I think, and we're also trying to work with them now to see how do we attract the talent. it's only going to grow. And I think today, for anyone who's in this industry as an entrepreneur, has to come and say, I'm willing to go to Bahrain, or I'm willing to go to Niyam, I'm willing to go to Riyadh. However, this is my laundry list of things that I need. And from what I see, the first and most important thing everyone's looking for is talent. So if you can attract the talent, that's where that's going to be the Mecca, of this industry, I believe.
Okay. We have run out of time, I'm afraid. But thank you to all three of you for your thoughts. And thanks for tuning in. I hope you will enjoy the rest of your conference.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you.